I was reading a book the other day and I read this sentence in the book that said, when you're a dependent person, whether emotionally dependent, physically dependent, intellectually dependent, okay, I'll go into those as well. But when you're a dependent person, you can't choose, because there's three levels here. There's dependent, there's independence, and there's interdependence. So like I just said, dependence is emotionally dependent on someone. If you don't love me, my world falls apart. Physically dependent would be obviously, I want to say, like, accessibility kind of things. Like I need your help to help me do something. um, and then interdependence is the recognizing of both. So you become dependent, or you are dependent, just like a baby. A baby is dependent on the mother, right? Somewhere throughout the years, teenage years, they become independent, okay? And then we'll use, like, in adulthood, is interdependence, realizing that, I need both. I'm independent within myself, but I recognize that I would like, and desire the love of someone else. So that's where interdependence is. So anyway, back to my story of what I read. I read this sentence in the book that says, dependent people can't choose to be interdependents because they don't own enough of themselves. That sentence has literally been stuck in my brain for, I want to say, a good week and a half now. It just keeps replaying in my mind. And I say that because it's so true. Even when you're emotionally dependent on someone, if you don't love me, my world falls apart. If you don't like me, my sense of worth, my sense of value, I don't have any without your approval, without your validation, without your, like, without your love. So dependent people, you can't just overnight become this interdependent person. I'll use another example that's more familiar with kind of now's terms, is the attachment styles. If you have not heard of them, Heidi Priebe on YouTube. Oh my God, she goes into each attachment style so beautifully, so descriptive, so informative, and she has personal experience with that too. So if you have an anxious attachment style, you can't just move into secure attachment style overnight, okay? Because anxious attachment most of the time are emotionally dependent on their partners. They need them to, validate their sense of self. They need lots of reassurance, because they want to make sure everything's safe, because that's how they control things to keep them safe. And experience is speaking, okay? I was very anxious attachment. And anyway, long story short, there's no judgment here. I'm just saying, when you're so anyway, when you're emotionally dependent, you can't just become, you can't just choose a secure attachment style. When you're dependent, you can't just choose to become interdependence because you don't own enough of yourself. I don't know. That sentence just keeps, like, replaying in my head over and over and over again. I see so many people out here in the world on social media, or people that I talk to, or, just in my everyday reality. They're so reactive to their reality. They don't own enough of themselves to choose something different. I'm trying to think of, like, maybe an example that I can use. Um, Kind of going back to, like, emotionally dependent, because I have so much experience with that. When my partner did not validate me or did not reassure me that, like, things were okay, my entire world would crumble. Okay, I'd get very anxious, I'd get very paranoid, I'd get very, like, all of a sudden my thoughts start streamlining of, like, all these scenarios that are, they're not real. I'm making up all these things of how basically the relationship is not okay. So, like, I need him to tell me it's okay so I know it's okay. Do you see how I didn't own enough of myself in those moments, because I need him to tell me it's okay. I don't own enough of who I am to be able to choose a more secure attachment style. I need to be okay within myself and own that part of myself that says, hey, um, I'm recognizing that I need reassurance, but I need to give it to myself instead of relying on that person to give it to me. Because if that person does not give it to me, my entire world falls and crumbles, and then I become reactive to my situation. I start pointing the finger and I start blaming just because they don't give me the answer that I'm looking for. I want you to really think about that in your reality and your situations. What right now has power over you that you are so reactive to that you're almost on this is going to be triggering when I say this, but I say it from a place of deep unconditional love. What is triggering you? What are you looping in a cycle with? I say that because I want to help you grow and come out of this. I want you to be able, if you're dependent in anything, I want you to be able to be independent first. So then you can choose to be interdependent, and you can choose the reality you would like. I truly want that for anyone that listens to my podcast, because I've been in those shoes. I have been the anxious attachment. I've been the emotionally dependent. I've been the very reactive person in my reality where everything that everyone said, triggered me. Everything. On the inside, I swore it didn't, but clearly by my actions, clearly by my disturbance of it, it completely changed my world. I start circling around in my thoughts, and I start going into these scenarios of like what I should have said and what I should have did. And you see how I didn't own enough of myself. You see how I let that situation have power over me because I was so reactive. And I was talking to my client, one of my clients, I love her to death. I was talking to one of my clients on Friday, and we went into like this deep conversation of like the reactive and proactive mindset. And my client was like, how do I get from reactive to proactive? How do I get there? The best thing that I gave her that I can tell you from personal experience is you start pausing. What do I mean by that? Every time something triggers you, something upsets you, something gets you out of character, something makes you yell, scream, the frowning face, the ugly, and when I say ugly, guys, I mean ugly personality, okay? The ugly kind of face that comes out and the ugly personality that comes out. I want you to think about those things, and I want you to pause instead of what you normally would do. Family members for me used to be a very certain trigger, especially what they thought of me triggered me so much if they didn't think of me the way I thought I viewed myself. If they gave me a different perception, I let them own me. I didn't own enough of myself. I let them have power over me based off their own thoughts and opinions. That's still emotionally dependent on them to how do I say that? To like myself, my worth, my value. I'm emotionally dependent on another person to give me that. And because I don't own enough of myself to know that I am those things. I am, the life I'm living, the life I'm creating, the life I'm leading. Today and right now, I have so much that I am doing that I'm so proud of, that I'm so, there's all these things that I never could have done if I was still an emotionally dependent person. Because the second somebody made a face or frowned or like, oh my God, like, don't you see how silly you look? Like getting on this podcast, you don't even have, all the equipment that all those like real podcasters have. You just have an iPhone and what are those things? Selfie light thing. Anyway, do you see how the version I am today, I wouldn't be here today because that reactive, emotionally dependent version I could never step into this version because I relied on the opinions and judgment of others. I would have never been able to step into who I am today had I still been a reactive person and let other people define who I am. If I know I am a good parent, I know it to my core. I do everything possible for my kids. I love my kids with every ounce of my being. I try my hardest to do, interactive things with them, to read to them, to do all the things that, I feel like you see other moms do. If I know in my being that I try my hardest and I know I'm a good mom, why would I let someone else frown upon me or judge me in a maybe difficult time or a situation where, I'm yelling at them and I shouldn't be because that's what they think? Why on earth would I let them give me my sense of self, give me my worth and value? If I know I'm a good parent, that's owning enough of myself to be like, you know what? They can frown, they can judge, they can do whatever. I know I'm a good parent. I'm not letting these outside circumstances make me believe and make me feel like I'm not, when I know I try my hardest. I know I do. So I'm not emotionally dependent on these other people anymore to give me my sense of, motherhood, to give me my sense of self, to give me my sense of worth, my value. I'm not doing it anymore. That's owning enough of yourself. So anyway, back to what I'm saying about how do you get there? You pause. I want you to think right now of something that normally triggers you, maybe in a relationship, maybe in a marriage, maybe in family, maybe with I don't know, kids, bosses, something that circles around in your brain quite often, and it's going to trigger you. Like I'm thinking of a situation between my family at one point. One family member of mine had it in their head that they knew exactly how the situation was going to play out because it has played out like that every time before. So they're ready. They've got the armor on. Okay, they've got their armor on. They're ready to fight because they know, what this situation is going to bring about. That right there is the reactive mindset that I'm talking about. But I want to also say, those situations, if you have any of those circling around in your brain right now, I want you to think of it right now and think of how you can pause instead of react. The second you pause and you don't give into the reaction, it's not saying that you're weak-minded, you don't stand up for yourself, and you're not these, things. I just want you to pause. I want you to start thinking about it now so you can actually implement it when it does happen. Pause. Do not react. Don't say anything if you don't, I don't know what your kind of reaction is, but don't say anything. Just pause and take it in. Listen to actually what they're saying instead of reacting. And then go about your day. And I want you to watch where your thoughts go. Those thoughts of yours will streamline, and you will that's your roadmap. That is your roadmap, because eventually you're going to find why that certain situation or that certain person triggers such a reaction in you. Because one, they have power over you. You need to find out why. When you find out why, you revoke access, you revoke that power over you, and then guess what? You own another part of yourself that you were once giving away consistently, constantly. You own that part of yourself now. You know what? That doesn't mean I'm not good enough. I can't believe I let that person make me feel like I wasn't good enough. I don't depend on their thoughts and opinions of me. Who are they? They didn't incarnate here in this realm with me. I came here with my brain and my body. So why am I letting another person dictate how I feel? It's going to take some time. It is. It's going to take some time pausing. It's going to take, this could be bosses, this could be in the workplace. This can be clear. I mean, obviously in family dynamics, it's going to take time to understand why they have power over you. That's the most important part here. Baby steps, okay? Baby steps. We have to figure out why they have power over you. And then once we find that out, you will be able to own a part of yourself that you didn't have before. I used to I used to say it like this, I think to I'm not sure. Anyway, a couple people, I used to kind of explain it in this way. Imagine a big circuit board full of plugins, okay? All these plugins, I'm sorry, Apple and Spotify, I'm a visual person. So On YouTube, you're going to get the visualization of this, but maybe in the mind's eye, you can kind of, for the podcast, you can imagine what I'm saying. So imagine a circuit board, and all these wires and plugins are coming out of you, okay? From the center of your being, you've got like, we'll say 500 plugins. But these circuit boards that they're attached to are things that hold power over you, are things that trigger you, are things that, completely unravel you to your core. They're things that have power over you. Now imagine when you start pausing, you're not plugging it into the circuit board of where it normally goes. You're right there getting ready to plug it in, but you're actually unplugging it and letting it sit instead of plugging it in and keeping it there. Okay? So when you pause, this is your roadmap of why these things have power over you. Now, once you figure out why it has power over you, you're going to take that cord all the way back to the center of your being. And now you have more charge and battery for you. I want to say that again. When you take that cord out of the circuit board, you take it out of the plug-in, you figure out why it has power over you, you are able to take that all the way back to the center of your being and give that power to yourself and plug it in somewhere in yourself where you have the power over you. You own enough of yourself to then choose what reactions you would like to be responsible of. In this book also, it says responsibility is the response able. How did I say that? Was it backwards? It's able to respond. So responsible, they put response and able next to each other. So they broke it down into 2 words. You now have power of what you are choosing to engage with. That is the most powerful thing you can possibly have in this lifetime. So when other people look at you, they're thinking, wow, how do they have the mental resilience, the mental strength to deal with something like that? I could never deal with it like that, because they are too, they have too much, they don't own enough of themselves. So the power is given to all these things and all these people. And I think that that's just the most important thing that you could have in this existence of life, is to be able the power to choose what you want to do. You don't want to keep engaging in this relationship this way. Why are you choosing it? That's that's a reality shattering experience. I'm not choosing it. They don't, they don't ever listen to my feelings, and they don't know how I feel. And I just keep, going around in circles, and I just keep telling them how I feel, and they're not listening to me. You are choosing to engage with them knowing that they don't, quote unquote, hear you. What if, okay, this is kind of going off into another subject here, but perception of reality, everyone perceives it differently. What if in your mind, them not saying anything to you, or them just staring at you, because this was what happened to me, you're taking that as they're not listening to me because they're not engaging in conversation. What if that other person just actually listens, and that's how they listen to you? They engage with you by actually listening, actually hearing you, instead of how you would react, okay? How you would, quote unquote, listen to the other person, is you would constantly chime in words of not advice, but like, words of how you feel and how this. You're not actually listening. If you're constantly throwing in words and constantly throwing in your own 2 cents, you're not actually listening to your partner. I know that is very triggering for somebody. Somebody probably just clicked off the video just now, because I'll tell you what, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it's exactly what I would have done. No, I don't choose to do that. They don't listen to me. What if there's another perception here? Okay. So again, the second I started pausing in those moments, I started to see that partner differently. I started to see, what if they are listening to me, but how I would listen would be to constantly be putting in my 2 cents and cutting them off, and, well, what about me and what about this and blah, blah, blah. Well, what about I said this, you didn't say anything. You know what I mean? Um, again, so it's all tying in together somehow. I gave that person power over me, but also I was not a listener. I was a very reactive person. So when I got a proactive person in front of me that actually engaged with me by listening, it looked like to me they weren't, because I was a reactive person and that's not how I would have engaged in the conversation. That's a paradigm shift right there. That's the whole point of this podcast. It is to shift our realities, to shift our paradigms into versions we never knew existed. That's my whole thing of why I want to be here, why I want to be on this podcast. There's so much in my life that has shifted me into a person I never knew was possible. The version I am today is very proactive, is very interdependent. I get to choose. That to when I started this kind of journey, I was a very dependent person on everything. Even though I swore I wasn't. I was very independent physically, meaning financially, I can hold my own, stuff like that. But emotionally, I was very dependent. Very dependent. So I share my experiences on here to hope to change and shift someone else's paradigm so you can step into that version of yourself where you can start to see reality different. You can start to choose what you engage with and the life you actually want to live. I see you next week, loves.